The first way to turn an avoidant into a chaser is to become the person who ends the dynamic before they can, and to do it with such finality that they realize you're not coming back unless they change the rules of engagement. Avoidants are accustomed to being the ones who control the distance in relationships, who decide when to pull back, who determine the pace of intimacy. When someone else takes control of the exit, it completely disrupts their sense of power and safety. This isn't about playing hard to get or using manipulation tactics. This is about genuinely recognizing that the relationship dynamic isn't serving you and making the mature decision to remove yourself from it. The key is that your departure must feel permanent and non-negotiable, not like a strategy to get their attention or change their behavior. When you walk away first, you must do it cleanly and completely. Don't leave breadcrumbs or hints that you might return if they behave differently. Don't explain in detail why you're leaving or give them a roadmap for winning you back. Simply state that you've realized the dynamic isn't working for you and you're choosing to invest your energy elsewhere. The avoidant's entire psychological framework depends on being the one with the power to leave. When you remove yourself from their life before they can remove themselves from yours, it creates a profound psychological disruption. They're forced to confront what it feels like to be on the receiving end of someone else's decision, to prioritize their own well-being over maintaining connection. This role reversal is deeply unsettling because it forces them to experience the powerlessness and uncertainty they've been putting you through. They realize that while they were focused on maintaining their ability to leave, they never considered that you might leave first. The possibility of permanent loss becomes real in a way they've never experienced before. When an avoidant realizes you've genuinely walked away and might not return, it triggers their attachment system in ways their own withdrawal never does. They begin to experience authentic abandonment fears that their defensive strategies can't protect them from. The safety they felt in always being able to leave disappears when they're the ones being left. Create scarcity around your attention and emotional availability. The second strategy for turning an avoidant into a chaser is to make your attention and emotional energy genuinely scarce resources that must be earned rather than freely given. Avoidants have typically become accustomed to receiving emotional labor, validation, and care from others without having to reciprocate consistently. This unbalanced dynamic allows them to feel important and valued without vulnerability or effort. Transform yourself from someone who's always available to someone whose time and attention have real value and limited availability. This means having other priorities, interests, and relationships that take precedence over their sporadic needs for connection. When they reach out, you're not always immediately available. When they want to spend time together, you have other commitments that can't be easily rearranged. This scarcity must be authentic rather than performed. You're not pretending to be busy to manipulate their behavior. You're actually creating a life so full and engaging that their presence becomes just one of many sources of fulfillment rather than your primary focus. You're developing genuine independence that makes you less accessible and more valuable. The avoidant begins to realize that your attention isn't guaranteed, that your emotional availability isn't automatic, that your care isn't unconditional. They must actually invest effort to maintain their place in your life rather than simply existing in it passively. This realization forces them to consider what they're willing to give to keep receiving what you provide. When attention becomes scarce, it becomes precious. The avoidant starts to value interactions with you more highly because they can't take them for granted. They begin to work for your time and energy in ways they never had to before, which activates their pursuit instincts and competitive nature. This scarcity also makes them appreciate the quality of what you provide when you are available. Because your attention isn't constant, they pay more attention to it when they receive it. They begin to understand what they've been taking for granted and what they stand to lose if they don't invest more effort in maintaining the connection. Demonstrate that you have better options and you're actively exploring them. The third way to make an avoidant break their own rules is to show them that you have other options for connection, partnership, and emotional fulfillment, and that you're genuinely open to pursuing those alternatives. Avoidants often maintain distance because they assume you'll always be there when they're ready to reconnect. When they realize you have other opportunities and you're seriously considering them, it threatens their sense of security and control. This isn't about making them jealous through deception or manipulation. This is about actually building a life where you have multiple sources of companionship, romance, and emotional connection. Date other people who treat you better. Cultivate friendships that provide emotional support and understanding. Pursue opportunities that expand your social circle and increase your options. The key is that these alternatives must be genuine improvements over what the avoidant has been providing. The people you're spending time with should demonstrate consistency, emotional availability, and appreciation for your company. They should treat you in ways that highlight the poverty of what you've been accepting from the avoidant. When the avoidant sees you being pursued by others, treated well by new romantic interests, or simply enjoying fulfilling connections with people who value your presence, it forces them to confront the reality that you have choices. They realize they're not your only option for love, companionship, or emotional fulfillment. This recognition of your alternatives triggers their competitive instincts and fear of replacement. They begin to understand that maintaining distance doesn't guarantee your availability. It actually increases the likelihood that someone else will recognize your value and provide what they've been withholding. The avoidant must confront the possibility that while they've been keeping you at arm's length, someone else might be drawing you closer. This threatens their assumption that they can return to you whenever they're ready and find you exactly where they left you, waiting patiently for their attention. Make them experience what genuine indifference feels like. The fourth strategy for turning an avoidant into a chaser is to reach a state of authentic indifference about their behavior, their feelings, and their participation in your life. This isn't performed indifference or strategic emotional withdrawal. This is genuine detachment that comes from truly accepting that they may never be capable of the kind of relationship you want. This indifference manifests as complete lack of reaction to their typical behaviors. When they withdraw, you don't pursue or ask what's wrong. When they send mixed signals, you don't try to decode their meaning. When they reach out after periods of silence, you respond politely but without enthusiasm or emotional investment. Most importantly, you stop caring about their emotional state, their reasons for distance, or their potential for change. You accept them exactly as they are right now, while also accepting that what they're offering isn't enough for you. This acceptance without hope for change is deeply unsettling to avoidance because it suggests permanent resignation rather than temporary frustration. Your indifference must be complete and consistent. You can't show moments of caring or investment that suggest you're still emotionally attached to the outcome. The avoidant must sense that you've genuinely moved beyond needing them to be different and beyond hoping they'll become more emotionally available. This authentic indifference is terrifying to avoidance because it represents the complete loss of their power to affect your emotional state. They can no longer make you happy by showing interest or hurt by withdrawing. Their behavior becomes irrelevant to your peace and well-being, which makes them feel invisible and unimportant. When an avoidant realizes they've lost the ability to impact someone emotionally, it often motivates them to work harder to regain that influence. They begin to chase you, not because they've learned to love better, but because they need to feel significant in your life again. Force them to compete for something they thought was guaranteed. The fifth way to make an avoidant break their own rules is to create situations where they must actively compete for your attention, affection, and time, rather than receiving these things automatically. Avoidants often take their special status in your life for granted, assuming that their importance to you is permanent regardless of their level of investment. Stop giving them preferential treatment based on your history together. Don't prioritize their needs over other people's simply because of past connection. Don't save your best energy, time, or emotional availability for them if they're not consistently earning it through their current behavior. Treat them based on their present actions rather than their past significance. If they're not showing up consistently now, they don't deserve the priority position they once held. If they're not investing in the relationship currently, they shouldn't receive the benefits of someone who is fully committed. This creates a situation where they must actively work to maintain their importance in your life, rather than passively assuming it will continue regardless of their effort. They realize they're now competing with other people who are showing more interest, investment, and consistency than they are. The avoidant begins to understand that their place in your life isn't permanent or guaranteed. They must earn their position through ongoing effort rather than maintaining it through past merit or assumed entitlement. This realization forces them to consider what they're willing to do to keep their place in your world, why breaking their rules transforms the entire dynamic. When you successfully implement all of these strategies, you force the avoidant to experience emotions and behaviors they've spent their entire life avoiding. They find themselves in the unfamiliar position of being the one who wants more contact, more certainty, more connection. They become the person who's wondering where they stand, who's uncertain about the other person's feelings, who's working to maintain rather than create distance. This role reversal is profoundly uncomfortable for avoidants, but it's also awakening. They discover feelings they didn't know they were capable of experiencing: genuine longing, authentic desire for connection, real fear of loss. They realize they might actually need someone more than they're comfortable admitting. The avoidant is forced to break their own rules because their usual strategies no longer work. Distance doesn't create desire when you're not pursuing them. Withdrawal doesn't increase their value when you have other options. Mixed signals don't keep you interested when you're genuinely indifferent to their communication. They must either accept permanent loss of connection or step outside their comfort zone to pursue what they want. Many avoidants will choose to break their own rules rather than lose someone who has become important to them, especially when they realize that person is no longer guaranteed to be available. However, it's crucial to understand that making an avoidant chase you doesn't necessarily mean they've overcome their attachment issues or learned to love in healthier ways. They might pursue you to restore their sense of control and importance, only to return to their old patterns once they feel secure again. The real question isn't whether you can make an avoidant chase you, but whether you want to be with someone who only pursues you when they feel they might lose you. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't turning them into the chaser, but becoming someone who no longer needs to be chased to feel valuable and loved.